Hey guys, Hackersploit here, back again with the second video in the ethical hacking course, which will take you from beginners to advanced users or ethical hackers. So in this video, as I mentioned in the earlier video, I'm going to be talking about setting up your hacking environment. So this is actually to do with just setting up your environment so you're good to start hacking. So we're going to be using Kali Linux as the primary OS because it has a lot of tools and features that are just mandatory for hacking. So apart from that, we're going to use VirtualBox for operating system virtualization, which means that we're going to be running Kali Linux virtually on our Windows or Mac operating system or primary PC, if that's what you guys are running. So this will work on even Linux. The reason I'm saying we're going to run this on VirtualBox is just because it's much better for me personally, so I can actually record the videos and show you. I would recommend you install it on any of your computers if you're using that for hacking, but either way, you can learn hacking perfectly via this method of running it virtually. So the first thing we're going to do is we have to install a software called VirtualBox. So just open your browser and Google VirtualBox. And there you are, just click on the first or second link, and here you are, VirtualBox. VirtualBox is just a virtualizer for Windows, Mac, Linux that allows you to run a operating system within an operating system. So you're going to go into downloads. Now the reason I'm using VirtualBox is it's very easy to set up, and I would recommend this for beginners. So here we are, VirtualBox binaries. So we have VirtualBox 5.1.14 platform packages. That's basically the setup. And you have Windows, Mac OS X, and Linux distributions, and Solaris. So this can run on any of the operating systems that you're currently running. I'm running Windows, and for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm going to use this as my example. I'm going to open that in a new tab, and it's going to start downloading. It's about 118 megabytes, so yeah, just let that download. I already have it installed, but the setup is pretty simple. Once it finishes downloading, just run through the setup and just hit next, and you know, the pretty standard stuff. Alright, so once you have that installed, it'll give you this icon here, or alternatively you could search for it here. There you are, so there we are, but I already have my icon here, and just start it up. And do note that when you start it up for the first time, you're not going to have any of these here. These are my virtual machines that I've just created, my virtual operating systems, but I'm going to show you how to set it up with Kali Linux. So just make sure it's up and running. And now we want to go into Google. Let's just go into Google again, and you want to hit Kali Linux, and you want to open the first link. And you want to go into downloads, and here you are, you have your Kali Linux downloads. Now depending on the operating system or your processor architecture, you're either running 64-bit or 32-bit. If your processor is a 32-bit, make sure you download the 32-bit ISO, which you can download directly or using a torrent client if that's your thing. You then have your 64-bit, which is currently for 64-bit processors. So whatever you have is fine. So what I'm going to do now, once you've downloaded it, just make sure you hit direct or torrent, whatever. Once it finishes downloading, you want to go back into VirtualBox, and you want to hit new. Alright, so once you hit new, it's giving you the option of creating a new virtual machine. So we're going to give it a name. Let's call it Kali hacking. Let's just call it Kali Linux HB hacking box. All right. So the type is Linux, and the version is the latest version 2.63. 2.63 and 4. This is the Linux kernel. Again, make sure you select the appropriate one according to your processor's architecture. I have a 64-bit, so that's what I'm going to use. Next, now this is your memory size. This is how much RAM you want to dedicate to Kali Linux. Now, if you're running a 4 GB machine or computer, I would recommend just leaving this where it is, or you could give it about 2 gigs of RAM. That's what I would recommend. So 2 gigs of RAM is about 2048 megabytes. That's 2 gigs of RAM, which is perfectly fine for Kali Linux and whatever we're going to be doing. Alternatively, if you have more RAM, you could increase that, but I really don't see the need to. Hit next and create a virtual hard disk. Now make sure that is the option, as we are going to install Kali Linux. So here we have, this is basically where you want the Kali Linux to be installed. We're going to create a virtual hard drive. We're going to create it and make sure it's a VirtualBox disk image, not a virtual hard drive. I'll explain that later. Hit next, and we want to give it a dynamically allocated, just basically it increases as we need it. So hit next, and here we can basically specify where we want to save the virtual hard drive. I'm going to save mine. I'm going to save mine on the desktop for this tutorial. I'm just going to save it there. You can save it anywhere. And then what I recommend as the storage space is about 20 gigabytes. Just give it about 20 gigabytes and just create. Hit create, and there you are. Now, once you've created the virtual machine, you want to go select it and you want to go into settings. So just let it open settings, and don't be overwhelmed here. We're going to go through it step by step. So basic, leave that as it is. We have already done that. You don't need to touch anything else here. Just make sure you specify here whatever you want it to be called. You can change it there. Next, you want to go into system. Now again, you can change how much RAM you want at any time. Now in boot order, just leave everything the way it is. We don't have a floppy drive, so you might as well just leave that. With hard drive and optical, just leave it at those two, but you can check them if you want to. Chipset PI X3 is fine. Leave everything the way this is. Now the processor, the most important thing is you have to enable PAE or NX. Alright, now basically this is going to use the processor's physical address, and it's just going to be communicating with the processor directly to increase the speed of the virtual machine. So make sure this is checked, and here you can select how many cores that you want to allocate to the virtual machine. I usually leave it at 1 because one of my cores on my computer is about 3.2 gigahertz, and that's perfectly normal to support Kali Linux. Now in acceleration, you don't want to touch anything. In display, here you can basically in video memory dedicate how much video memory you want to give it. I usually find 128 megabytes is fine, but if your computer has less, you can also reduce that to how much you have. Make sure you enable 3D acceleration, and if you want it to run on multiple monitor mode, you could, but I only want it to run on my current monitor, so that's fine. Now the next tab here is video capture. If you want to record your screen, you can actually enable that. I don't really need that now because I have an external video recorder. So now the most important step is the storage. Now the controller, we have already created a virtual hard drive, so that's already linked it to the virtual machine. Now we need to specify where the ISO is. Now wherever you've downloaded it, make sure you just go there and select it. I'm going to go to where mine is, and as you can see, I have this one here. I have multiple, but for this tutorial I'm going to use my Kali Linux. Just select it, and that's it. So you've loaded the ISO and you've loaded the hard drive. Next, in audio, you can basically just choose whatever audio drivers you have. In network, make sure you have make sure it's a network adapter. You don't need anything else for this tutorial. So that's all good. So after this, you're good. After this, after you've just followed those settings, you should be good. Just hit OK, and we're going to give it a test. We're going to hit start. Alright, so just hit start, and it's going to start the virtual machine. So just give it a few seconds to boot up, and we should be good. There we are. Alright, so it's going to say starting virtual machine, and there you are. And here we are. This is the first screen. So Kali Linux is actually booted up, and you have a few options here. So what you could do is live. You can run it live. That means you'll not install Kali Linux, but in this video I'm going to show you how to install it step by step. So that's basically running it live. You can then run it live with forensic mode, where you're analyzing the repositories. We then have live USB persistence, this if you're running it on a USB, which you are not. And finally we have installation for beginners outreachment and graphical installation. So that's what we're going to do. Just hit enter and it'll start the graphical installation. So just give it a few seconds. If it gives you this error, don't worry about this. It's just gonna switch from that. So again, here we are, graphical. Select the language that you are using or that you are comfortable with, and hit continue. I'm okay with English, and you can select whichever country you're from. I'm just going to select United Kingdom and hit OK. British English, configure the keyboard. No, I use United States English. Right? If this does not work, it does not working with my mouse scroll wheel. We're just gonna go back up here. American English, I did not see that. Hit continue, and it's gonna say detect and mount CD-ROM. It's just gonna start reading from the ISO. So give that a few seconds. It's just gonna read all the files it needs. Alright, so once it's done all that it needs to do and it's successfully connected to the internet, it's going to ask for the host name for this system. So the host name is a single word that identifies your system on the network. So this is basically your username. I'm just going to create mine as ɪ'ʟ, excuse me, HB, alright? Or let's just give it my name, Alexis. There we are, and we're just going to hit continue. You can name it whatever you want, as long as you're able to identify it. Or just for simplicity, if you're really a beginner, I would recommend just leaving it as ɪ'ʟ. Alright, so hit continue, and then you have your domain name. You can just hit continue and just skip that. You don't really need to do that right now. Now your root password, you can, this is basically your password for accessing root on Linux. So this you can use anything you want to use here. For me, I'm just going to use I'm just going to say ɪ'ʟ123 because I don't really need it to be secure. ɪ'ʟ123, you can see it there. There we are, and here ɪ'ʟ123. Continue, and it's going to start setting up the clock and other stuff. So let it just go through that, and let's see what where it goes next. Right? Alright, so in the next step, it's going to ask you to start partitioning disks and where you want Kali Linux to be installed. So here we have guided. We have a few options. You can actually use the entire disk. You can use the entire disk and set up LVM. But what we're going to do for the sake of this tutorial is use the entire disk, which we've already created. So don't worry about it. It's just going to give you the disks that are currently available. And as you can see, we have the 20 gigabytes VirtualBox hard drive. It's not going to scan any hard drives of your computers. This is 100% safe. It's only going to use the one that you've created virtually. So as you can see here, 80 VBox hard disk. I'm going to say continue, and I'm going to say all files in one partition. That's recommended for new users. Make sure you select that and continue. Finish partitioning and write changes to the disk. As you can see, it's created two partitions. One is a swap partition and one is a ext4 partition. So hit continue, and I'm going to say write changes to disk. Make sure you select yes, and hit continue, and it's going to start partitioning the disks, and it's going to start installing the system. So I'll catch you guys once it's done. Alright guys, so once it's finished installing the operating system, it's going to ask you to install the grub bootloader on the hard disk. So this is very important. This will basically give it'll give Kali Linux the ability to boot up correctly. So it's going to ask you to install the grub bootloader to the master boot record. Just hit yes. That's very important. And this is the hard drive here. Make sure you select it. It's the virtual hard drive. Select install, and it's going to start installing it into the virtual hard drive. So let it just finish the installation. Just has a few more things left. Yeah. Alright, so once it's done installing everything, it's going to give you this prompt, finish the installation. Installation is complete. So you're basically done there. Just hit continue, and it's going to start removing the live packages and finishing the installation. Give it a few seconds and we should be good to run Kali Linux for the first time in this series of lessons. So hope you guys are excited. Let's see where this goes. Alright, so just again, let it just finish the installation. Might take a few minutes or a few seconds. I don't know. Let's see. Alrighty guys, so once it's installed, it's going to reboot, and it's going to reboot into Kali Linux. So everyone, welcome to Kali Linux. Now, one thing I wanted to point out here, if you go ahead and write your username and your password that we set earlier during the installation, you're going to get something really weird. So I remember my username was Kali and my password was Kali123. Now if I hit enter, when it's gonna say sorry, that didn't work. Now what I wanted to say to you is the username will change back to root after the installation, so you have to change it again in Kali Linux once we log in. So the username after installation of Kali Linux is always root, and the password remains the same. It remains the same password you kept during the installation. So Kali123, there we are, and it's going to start up Kali Linux. We've logged in, and yeah, there we are. Let's just give it a few seconds to start, and there we are. Welcome to Kali Linux. How exciting. We're all ready. I know we're getting really excited to start hacking. So that's basically it for this lesson, guys. I hope you guys found the video helpful. If you did, please leave a huge like and comment down below if you didn't understand anything. I'll gladly help you. Otherwise, have a fantastic day, guys. Peace.